Hi, this is Miss Candace Kelly. How are you?
I am good. How are you doing? It's so good to see you. I love all your energy from your people talking.
Thank you so much.
Yes,
Please introduce yourself to my people, to the audience.
absolutely. I'm Candace Kelly, and I'm a legal analyst as well as I teach the law. And I also serve as an expert witness on various big time defamation cases. But I really like to teach the law to people, and I've been following this Sean Combs case in the court. I actually was covering his case in 2001 too, the shooting case, 24 years ago for BET News. So I did gavel to gavel with that. And here I am again with Sean Combs, and here we go. It's funny because inside and outside of the courtroom, it's kind of just a circus in both arenas, especially outside though. Those people getting in and now the public wanting to get in and really support him, they are there. It is never a dull moment when you are down at 500 Pearl Street in New York City.
So he has a lot of supporters coming out.
He has a lot of supporters. For those folks who are coming in who are the public, who come in and either they make it into the courtroom, they allow 14 people inside of the courtroom who are members of the public, 21 people who are members of the press. And if you don't get into the main courtroom, you go into a spillover room. And in that room, I mean, it is just filled with mostly the public and mostly supporters of Sean Combs, who say they want to see justice done and they're sharing their conspiracy theories. I mean, it's really, really interesting. And if you've seen any of the video on the outside, I mean, people are getting arrested, punched, berated, embarrassed, followed, scolded. It is quite a sight. If somebody had a camera, that would be a whole reality show. And that's at like 6, 7, 8 a.m. in the morning. So yeah, the public is there, the press is there, loads of folks there, and more people as we get to this verdict. That's going to be something. That's going to be something.
Are you there every day?
I'm there 3 times a week
Okay.
because I spend the other 2 days making appearances on shows like yours. You're my 4th or 5th show today that I get on and talk about the law, talk about various aspects of, the witnesses, and really are we reaching that RICO statute type of thing, because a lot of people have a hard time understanding what the heck that is.
Yeah. Listen, I'm not an expert in the law. Of course, me and the judge, we do this show every Monday.
Mm-hmm.
And then on Wednesdays, I do my own show. And, when he comes up, I guess, he'll go in more details. But this whole RICO thing, for me personally, listen, I think it's a stretch to charge Diddy with RICO. Now, is he an abuser? Yes. But I don't know. I just think and then hearing a witness's testimony is kind of crazy. It's like, okay, what were these people doing, and why didn't you just leave? I don't know. It's just it seemed like the prosecutors are pulling at any and everything to make RICO stick and to convince the jurors that you need to convict him under RICO.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think one of the things is kind of this relatability problem that people have with RICO, because when we think of RICO, we think, crime families and mafia and all the things that we've seen on TV with Scarface and Goodfellas. And so I think that a lot of people are like, that's not Sean. He was a successful businessman, right? Like, he had all of these businesses. Are you trying to tell me that all of that was created or existed at one point just so he could commit crimes? See, that's where I don't think that the jury's going to buy it. Even though legally, if you look at what he did, once you get the paper and the judge gives those instructions, they could get to RICO. I just think that there's a huge relatability problem because the way that we're trained in the media and what we understand with the Gambione family, it doesn't match up with Sean. Even though I think that the RICO has been met, I just don't know if jurors will say, oh, this whole enterprise, which is what the law says. The law says this whole enterprise existed just for you to do these underlying crimes. I don't know if that'll stick. I don't know if that'll stick, Dana.
And so again, when I spoke to you earlier, I said, okay, so between you and the judge, I'm really the juror here.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really appreciate you explaining that, because that's how I'm thinking. That's what I'm thinking. His enterprise, how he made his wealth, it was not by illegal means, but yes, he solicited prostitutions for his sexual whatever, but he was paying them. He wasn't making money from it. So that's why I'm not believing the RICO too much. And I do see the judge, and I'm about to bring him in. Just real quick, the witness today, Jane,
Yes, Jane.
because we all know who Jane is.
But we're not going to say, and that's been a big contention in the courtroom too, is bloggers, specifically a couple said the name, and that was brought up today. Like, what are we going to do about these publishers? They are not done with any of these bloggers who have mentioned the names. And here's the thing that people have to understand. You can mention a name and then say, oh, but someone else mentioned it first. That is not enough. If you mentioned it, you're just as guilty as the first person. And that's where some mistakes were made, I think. And I can understand, or maybe you might be reading a comment that says the name. Yeah, but I didn't say it. Somebody in the comment section said it. No, you actually said it. And that therein lies the problem. So, a lot of lessons learned. A lot of lessons learned.
All right. So, hi, Judge. How are you?
Okay, how are you?
Good.
Hello, how are you?
Ma'am, how are you, counselor?
Yeah, good to see you. Good to see you. I want to say for the record, I'm a legal analyst while I did complete law school, and I teach the law. I never practiced. I went right into TV, right? I landed where you landed, Judge.
That was after 40 years.
Exactly. You put in that groundwork. Very good to see you.
So,
Greetings.
this is Candace Kelly. I wanted to make sure you knew her name first and last. And so she's here because she's given us, the details, what's been going on in the courtroom, in the Diddy trial, and of course outside the courtroom. But I wanted to take this conversation. A lot of people are talking about the money, financial empire, because this is RICO. And if he is found guilty, he has a trust for his kids and probably a trust for his estate. But if he is found guilty, that trust can be broken, right? And what repercussions then after that? Can he potentially die a broke man and his family live without the wealth that they were accustomed to?
That is such a big question. One of the things, and I'm not sure if that was for the judge or for me, but
You take it.
yeah, one of the things that we have to realize, first of all, is that you have a trust or an irrevocable trust. It's not public record. That's very different from a will. So I'm not sure what he has in place. But like you said, what is at stake when it comes to a RICO statute is everything. Everything that potentially he touched inside of this criminal enterprise, that's what's at stake in terms of what he could lose. So that's really all his businesses were listed in the indictment, whether it's Sean John, whether it's Bad Boy, Love Records. There were a couple that I was looking up, Empower Global, Fair Share. These are businesses that were set up in order to help other businesses, especially during COVID. So his liquor brands, all of these were involved. And we did hear somebody on the stand come from Bad Boy, an executive, to talk about the kind of intermingling and collaboration between all of them. So that is why there's a very vague kind of cast the net. You know what? We want everything that was in the indictment when it comes to forfeiture and forfeiting assets. Now, as we know, as a lot of people know, there was somebody that was hired, a forfeiture asset specialist that was hired in order to help Sean. Because guess what? He does need that help. This person was hired last month. This was someone who used to work for the Department of Justice, has been working there since 1985, and now he consults on cases like this to help people, specifically like Sean Combs, who are in trouble and do not what to do, because it's a very complicated process. Is it not, Judge? Very complicated.
About 45 years ago, some people, including Joe Biden, Eastland, Stennis, et cetera, and Byrd, came up with some drastic changes in federal criminal procedure that allow the prosecution to effectively use their authority to persecute, irrespective of likely outcomes on convictions or not. The idea was is if we can't convict them, let's destroy them financially. It isn't consistent at all, and I've noticed over the last 45 years there's a complete deterioration in the habit or circumstance of trying to prove there's a connection between what the person is on trial for and how they got the income. Just because somebody has investments does not mean that all of those investments are the fruits of organized crime activity, racketeering. Actually, what it looks like to me, from my experience with that corrupt West Coast nonsense, is it's just everybody was trying to get mutual blackmail on everybody else so nobody could be in a position to take advantage of somebody else. I think this trial has gotten way overboard, and I noted there were 14 pages for what essentially is a 5-count indictment, which, considering that 4 of those counts come out of the Mann Act, my experience in defending people tried with such things is for 5 counts on something like that, you'd get 2.5 pages max on an indictment, and then have to fight like hell in order to get some specificity as to what they're talking about. In this, they laid it out, had press conferences, and it looked to me like they were trying to discredit someone. So even if that person were acquitted, there would be such a shadow cast over this person that nobody would give credence to anything that they had to see. That's just my outlook on it.
You know,
it's just a pimp game. And I'm sure, I'll interject this, I'm sure somewhere in here, if the defense is adequate, it's going to, considering they do have financial resources, bring in clinical psychologists and a bevy of experts to talk about such things as sadomasochism and such considerations. I used to represent a lot of pimps and prostitutes, and what I'm looking at is a familiar game, very common, sadomasochism.
But now I am thinking in this context, though, when we talk about prostitution, what has been made, and I think that the defense has thrown away this particular thing, like we're not even going to argue this anymore, that, I mean, we've heard at least from about 20 men through pictures or names through the witnesses that did cross state lines for purposes of getting paid for sex. And I'm wondering what you think about that, because that is the charge, and it does seem like they are there and they've been there dozens of times at this point.
Well, they've got a problem with the whole statute. It was propounded in 1911, if I'm not mistaken, to get Jack Johnson. And what the statute itself says is transporting females across state lines for, quote, illicit purposes, unquote. In Jack Johnson's case, it was his white wife, and they got him going through Georgia when they had been through there about 15 minutes because Georgia did not recognize interracial marriage. So the marshals boarded the train along with a few FBI agents who weren't authorized to be armed in those days, and they arrested Jack Johnson and charged him with transporting his wife across state lines. I had a case here in Memphis which might be edifying. It involved a male school teacher and a female school teacher. The male school teacher had a sibling who was involved in the drug trade, and to get leverage, what the FBI did is they followed the school teaching brother around, and he went to a conference over in West Memphis, Arkansas. He ran into the woman who was also a school teacher, and they hadn't seen each other since college. So they had just gotten divorced, both of them, and they decided to see if there was a spark still there. So she rode in his car, leaving hers in West Memphis, and drove over here. And they checked into a hotel in Memphis, and the FBI arrested them for Mann Act violations and were trying to extort his cooperation in being evidence against his brother. I got him acquitted, but I mean, it was a mess.
Yeah, you know, it's the overcharging here is, it sounds like that's what you're talking about. And what's interesting is that a lot of shows I go on, we definitely talk about the prosecution side because we are in that space. But as you said, the defense, they will bring a forensic psychologist to talk about Sean Combs. Because one thing that really stuck out to me as I sit there in court each day, just from the second, third week after jury selection, is that Sean Combs was an addict, like just an addict in the way that you think about somebody on the street. Like it's a very different understanding that I got when I sat there every single day. So that's a good part of his defense. He's clean now, from what I understand, being behind bars. Also, Sean Combs was he's addicted to sex. So I think that that's something else that will come in with the defense. Another thing I think too is that just the digital footprint between the texts, the emails, and the love that these women had for him. You definitely need a psychologist to contextualize that, because a lot of it is just hard to understand. Dana, I'll throw this to you just as a person on the jury, right, who doesn't have a legal background. Does it seem though as though these women had a choice, or the fact that we did see this? Let's just take the video that we're all familiar with at the Intercontinental Hotel. There was somebody who was in that room, according to testimony, not just Cassie. So you could, as a juror, say, well, it did look like she was being dragged back to a freak off. And to me, that sticks, but I'm not sure in a jury's mind what they're thinking.
What does that have to do with criminal enterprise?
Well, because one of the predicate crimes is the sex trafficking, which you have to get there by force or fraud or coercion. And if you are coercing her to go back to the freak off, well, then that's how it connects. So that's the argument.
Okay. The reason I raised that is, are you familiar with the cartoon series that Dell Comics made into Wonder Woman?
Yes.
Okay, you are aware of the fact that the person that invented the polygraph is the one that invented Wonder Woman. You ever read what he had to say about his wife, and the person he based the character on that was their live-in girlfriend for, I think, 17 years, and sadomasochism and what she was talking about? And in his writings, he's describing just about what you are finding out about this trial with Diddy, and he was saying it was the most glorious thing in the world. So I'm sure if they are on their game, they would be trying to bring in something to refute that, show that this is not criminal activity. This is just freak.
One more thing. What was it? What was the name again that Diddy hired for the finance? What do you call that again?
Oh, a forfeiture asset specialist, and the name specifically is Stefan Casella from the Department of Justice. He does this expert consulting work if anybody wants to look up more about him, but a forfeiture asset specialist.
And they do what exactly?
These are the people who will come in and help you. What you're really doing is you're asking the court, first of all, for kind of a bill of goods. If, for example, this is a very vague, all-inclusive, everything is we're getting the jets, we're getting the cars. This person will kind of work with the courts and say, hey, listen, we need you to walk us through why you're trying to take everything. In addition, you want to explain to Sean Combs and his team what it means when things are seized, what might stay, what can go, what are some protections that he has along the way, and then work it out with the judge. So that's someone who, again, will just walk somebody through that if you do potentially have to give up your assets, I'm going to help you prepare so that it's the best way possible. Oh, can I ask one question? Would you mind? I'm just curious. What does a judge think that the plea deal offer looked like? Because that has been under wraps. I'm assuming it was in the 2 digits in terms of how many years he would serve. He certainly turned it down. But
You can't do a plea bargain in the federal system for time. All you can do is for what they call a cap. In other words, you can plead out to something with a 5-year cap, and how much of that 5 years you get is up to the sentencing guidelines. If it's 10, it's 10. And the thing about federal time is there's no more federal parole. So if you get 5 years, it's 60 months, and you wind up being in federal custody one way or the other for 56, 57 out of the 60 months before you're released. And if it's 10 years, it's 120 months. You wound up being 116 to 118 months. You're in federal control, under federal control, not on parole, but in their custody.
Yeah, those federal guidelines are important. I always like to teach, and so I would tell people, look at the federal guidelines. You know, they have them for a reason so that they are similar across the board. And if you look at them, you'll see how they work. But it's a good way.
Lawyers ought to do. Most of them zone out when it comes to looking at the guidelines before you get in there. Always pay attention to the guidelines. And another one, if you want to understand the process better, get yourself a copy at the local law school bookstore of federal procedure.
Oh, yes.
They're usually thin and underline, interlineate, footnote, and such like, and that'll give you a big shot up on understanding what's going on that a lot of lawyers don't get because they zone out. They aren't interested. It bores them.
That's true. And the more informed you are, the better your questions, the more rights you have to advocate for yourself if you know about the law. People are just scared of the law, which is why I try to break it down in the simplest of terms so that people can say, you know what, I can sue, or this is what I need to do if my son gets in trouble. You have to know the details of the law. So thank you again, y'all, for having me.
I already said I would love you to come back because I want to have you to myself.
Okay, yes. Listen, verdict watch is coming soon. That's a whole nother thing, but that's going to be a kind of a crazy time. So
it is, and I do plan on coming back out there the end of June, the last week, because that's what I'm thinking. That's when they're going to wrap up. Because the judge said he wants to be done by July 4th. So,
absolutely.
So I said I'm going to make it my business to come up there to be amongst the rest of the content creators.
Let me know, because we're going to have to work that line. I mean, I've been there at 5 a.m. and been, the 20th person. You got to work that line. So.
All right. Thank you so much, Candace Kelly.
All right. Bye-bye. Good to meet you, Judge.
Handles in the description. Thank you so much for coming on, and definitely love to have you back.
All right. Enjoy.
Give her my number. If you need any consultation, give me a yell if you got any.
I absolutely will. Dana will connect me. I'll do that.